Imagine standing on the edge of a vast, unknown land-dense forests. Endless rivers, frozen winters, and communities that have lived here for thousands of years. Now imagine trying to name all of it with a single word. Today we call this country Canada. It's a name known around the world, associated with breathtaking landscapes, multicultural cities, and a unique national identity. But the story behind this name is far older, deeper, and more surprising than most people realize. Canada was not named after a king, not after a queen, not after an empire. Instead, its name came from an indigenous word, spoken in a moment of simple conversation and misunderstood in a way that changed history forever. In this documentary, we will explore the indigenous origins of the word Canada, the people who first spoke it, the European explorers who misunderstood it, how the name spread across maps and empires, and how a small word meaning village became the name of an entire nation. This is the full story of how Canada got its name. Long before the first European ships appeared on the horizon, North America was already a deeply populated and organized land. Indigenous peoples had lived here for over 15,000 years. The land we now call Canada was home to hundreds of distinct indigenous nations, including the Haudenosaunee, the Algonquin peoples, the Cree, the Inuit of the Arctic, the Micmac, the Anishinaabe, the Huron-Wendat, and so many more. Each nation had its own language, its own political systems, and its own names for the land, rivers, forests, and villages. There was no single name for the entire territory. The very idea of naming a whole continent, or even a massive country, was a European concept, not an indigenous one. For indigenous peoples, land was not owned or labeled in the same way. It was lived in, respected, and shared. And it was one of these indigenous languages that would unknowingly give birth to the name Canada. The key people in this story are the St. Lawrence Iroquoians. They lived along the St. Lawrence River Valley, near present-day Quebec, in the areas that would later become Quebec City and Montreal. They were sophisticated agricultural people, skilled farmers who grew corn, beans, and squash, often called the Three Sisters. Their communities were organized into villages, often surrounded by wooden palisades for protection. In their language, they used a specific word to describe these villages, these places where people gathered and lived. That word was Kanata. It was a simple, practical word. Kanata just meant village, town, or settlement. It was never meant to describe an entire landmass, let alone a future country. But history, as it often does, had other plans. In 1534, the King of France sent an explorer named Jacques Cartier to the New World. His mission was clear: find a northern route to Asia, discover riches like gold and spices, and claim new land for the French crown. On his second voyage in 1535, Cartier sailed up the majestic St. Lawrence River. He and his crew encountered the St. Lawrence Iroquoians, the people who called this river valley home. According to historical accounts from Cartier's own journals, he asked two young indigenous men he had brought with him as guides about the area. When pointing toward the village of Stadacona, near modern-day Quebec City, they used the word Kanata. They were likely just trying to give directions, saying, "Go to the village," or simply, "That is our settlement." But Cartier, an outsider with no understanding of their language or culture, misunderstood. He interpreted this simple, local term as the name for the entire region. He believed the land, the river, and everything he saw was called the country of Canada. This single misunderstanding, born from a brief exchange between cultures, would echo through centuries of maps, documents, and empires. It was a mistake that would inadvertently name a nation. After returning to France, Jacques Cartier wrote detailed reports and drew maps to describe the land he had explored. In these crucial documents, he repeatedly used the word Canada to refer to the territory along the St. Lawrence River. Soon after, European mapmakers began to adopt the name. By the 1540s, maps created in Europe were labeling large parts of the St. Lawrence region as Canada. What started as a linguistic misunderstanding became a fixed, geographic label, then a colonial identity, and finally, a political name. The original indigenous meaning of Kanata, the small, humble village, was slowly being erased from memory, replaced by a grander European interpretation. Yet even as its meaning was transformed, the name itself remained indigenous at its core. As French colonization expanded in the 17th century, the vast territory along the St. Lawrence River became known as New France. Within this sprawling colonial empire, the most developed and populated colony was officially called Canada. For the French, Canada referred mainly to the St. Lawrence River Valley and the growing French settlements like Quebec City and Montreal. The name began to appear everywhere, in legal documents, trade records, and military reports. The word had now fully entered the political language of Europe, its origins as a small indigenous term all but forgotten by those who now used it to govern. It had transformed from a direction to a destination, from a village to a colony. Then, in 1763, the world map was redrawn. After the pivotal 7 Years' War, France was forced to cede New France to its rival, Great Britain. It was common practice for conquering empires to rename the territories they acquired, wiping away the legacy of the former power. But Britain didn't. They kept the name Canada. Why? The name was already well established. It was widely used by the French-speaking settlers who remained, and it had decades of geographic and political recognition on maps and in treaties. The British simply adopted it. Later, they divided the land into Upper Canada, which was mostly English-speaking, and Lower Canada, which was predominantly French-speaking. These were eventually reunited as the province of Canada. Through all these political shifts, the Indigenous word lived on, now firmly embedded in the administrative structures of colonial power. The final defining moment came in 1867. The British North America Act was passed, uniting the provinces of Canada, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick into a new self-governing federation. The Fathers of Confederation chose a name for this new country, and the name they settled on was, of course, Canada. At this moment, Canada officially became a self-governing dominion, a nation with its own identity, poised to grow into the country we know today. Yet in that moment of national creation, few people stopped to think about where that name truly came from, that it was a word spoken by Indigenous people. Centuries earlier, a word they had used to describe their home. A word for village now defined an entire nation stretching from sea to sea to sea. So Canada's name is much more than just a label on a map. It is a powerful reminder of Indigenous presence and history, woven into the very fabric of the nation's identity. It is a symbol of the complex cultural encounters and misunderstandings that shaped this land. And it's a profound lesson in how history can turn small fleeting moments into lasting, powerful legacies. From a single word, Kanata, meaning village, came the name of one of the largest countries on Earth. Understanding this story helps us understand Canada itself, not just as a nation, but as a shared and often complicated history that continues to unfold. This is how Canada got its name. Thank you for watching. If you found this story interesting, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden histories that shape our world.